Hello my lovely students, and welcome to this video explaining Zeus and Jupiter, the Greek and Roman god. First of all, let's remember what the specification is wanting us to do at this point. Learners should have studied the following: the Greek and Roman gods, their responsibilities and symbols, and how they are typically represented in ancient Greek and Roman art. What does this mean? First of all, responsibilities. This really means what they're famous for, or what they were god of, and for what the Greeks and Romans specifically worshipped them. For symbols, these are the objects, animals, and other items with which they're associated. And how they're typically represented in ancient Greek and Roman art is what they look like, are they old, young, bearded, veiled, etc., what kind of position they're shown in, sitting, standing, in action, and with whom they're sometimes pictured. I've also added stories that are most famously associated with them to this video for ease of identification in the imagery, and to show some of the other characters with whom they're most often seen, and to help you understand why they were important to the ancient Greeks and Romans. Zeus and Jupiter. So, for a start, his most common epithet is the Thunderer, or the Cloud Gatherer, but he's also called Supreme Father of Gods and Men, no biggie. We can see straight away that he's really important. He's associated with the sky, which, let's face it, is kind of everywhere and would have been a lot bigger to people back in those days when there weren't really tall buildings blocking the sight of it. He's also called Jove when he's a Roman, and we'll come to that name later. His symbols tend to be that he is often seated on a throne. He is shown with or as an eagle, and he is carrying a thunderbolt. And yes, that's a thunderbolt. It's extremely pretty. And finally, he has a big old beard. Very important, very male, very old, and therefore very wise. His responsibilities, or what he's known for, well, for a start, he gives victory in battle as the strongest of the gods. He can also weigh fate of those fighting, using his golden scales to find out who will live or who will die. Very important to note that he and the other gods can't actually change fate, but they can delay that outcome if they don't like it. He's also the only god with powerful gods as children, like actual proper Olympian gods, not just nymphs or whatever. So, for example, Apollo, Artemis, Hermes, Athene, and Dionysus are all his children. And he's also known for storms. In many of the epic poems, when a storm comes, it's suggested that Zeus has sent it, not necessarily because he's annoyed with the people who are having to experience the storms, but because that seems to be part of his job, again, that association with the sky. Continuing his responsibilities, or what he's known for, he's in charge of Xenia, hospitality. He's the protector of guests, and there's another video in that entirely. He's also known for his sexual potency. In myth, he has around 115 lovers, note the inverted commas there, and many offspring. Often these offspring are semi-immortal heroes or mythical creatures. He doesn't always appear to his lovers as himself. It is suggested that for a god to go in their natural, maybe not particularly human form would blow that person apart, just as in the case of Semele, the mother of Dionysus. So he often appears as some interesting animals or just things. And many of his lovers, both male and female, are unwilling or even unwitting. They don't even know it's Zeus. And yes, because basically that's all of them, aside from his wife, although that's not exactly a happy marriage. His birth story is also helpful to us in understanding him. Having had all her previous children eaten by their father, the Titan Kronos, his mother, the Titan Rhea, picked Zeus out as special. She didn't want this baby to be eaten, and so she gave her husband Kronos, I say husband in the loosest of terms, a stone wrapped in a swaddling cloth which he ate, and she hid Zeus in a cave on Crete. Zeus, when he was a grown-up then, tricked Kronos into sicking up all of his brothers and sisters, and then dethroned Kronos with the help of these other Olympian gods. They defeated the Titans altogether and became rulers of the earth, the sea, and the underworld. In this image, it shows Psychro Cave, where Zeus was apparently hidden, and this is in the Lassithi region of Crete. Shown is the nanny goat Amalthea. Zeus apparently accidentally broke Amalthea's horn off, and that's what became the cornucopia, the horn of plenty. I'm not sure she was particularly happy about it. Now let's compare the way Zeus, the god of Greece, and Jupiter, the god of Rome, are viewed. First of all, the etymology of their names. Zeus is from a Proto-Indo-European word, deus, and appears to mean sky or shining, so showing that association with the sky. And in Rome, Jupiter comes from the Proto-Italic words for day and sky, jus, and father, pater. And that means sky father overall. Proto-Italic comes from Proto-Indo-European, and you can see the words are very, very similar, even though now to us in English they look completely different. So the etymology of both names suggests this association with the sky, overall the whole of the world, bringing down weather, very important to growing crops and such, and so really, really important. Jove comes from the Etruscan sky god, Jove, and the early Romans mixed with the Etruscans and got an awful lot of their traditions from them. The major temple of Zeus in Greece was the Temple of Zeus at Olympia, which had the massive chryselephantine statue made by the Greek sculptor Phidias in around 435 BC. It was so big they had to build a temple around it. That gives you an idea of how big this statue was and how important thus Zeus was. Olympia, a shrine to all the Olympian gods, has Zeus as its major god. In Rome, the major temple was the Temple of Jupiter Optimus Maximus, which literally means the Jupiter, the best and greatest, which was in Rome on the Capitoline Hill, the most important hill in Rome and the most important of the temples in Rome. So again, Jupiter is being shown as the most important of all the gods. For Greece, Zeus is generally seen as a bearded man, thus suggesting older and wiser, with a lightning bolt. Well, come on, electricity coming down from the sky. If you don't understand how that works, you're going to be afraid of it and you're going to be impressed by it. Also seated on a throne, he has a throne, he's a king, with a scepter, a symbol of kingship, and with an eagle, a predator, swoops down impressively on its prey. Definitely something that Zeus is seen as doing. In Rome, he is seen as exactly the same, showing that this symbol, this bearded man with all the power, hasn't changed at all. Now let's look at some stories about Zeus. They're mostly about Zeus, as the stories come from the Greek myths, which are then adopted by the Romans. The birth of Athene, or Minerva, is a story that both the Greeks and the Romans told. Zeus impregnated the Titan Metis, who is the representation of deep thought or cunning, who changed shape to try and outwit him and avoid his advances. He then heard a prophecy that she would bear a child stronger than its father, who, if male, would overthrow him, and if that is reminding you of Zeus and his own father Kronos, then it should. He is afraid of the same thing he did to Kronos happening to him. And so, fearing this, he swallowed Metis. Again, Kronos swallowing his children, the similarities are there. And he possibly tricked Metis into turning into a fly before he swallowed her. That's possibly an explanation of how on earth he managed to do that in the first place. However, inside Zeus, Metis started making armour for the child with which she was already pregnant. The hammering was driving Zeus nuts, and desperate, he asked Hephaestus to break his skull open with an axe to relieve the pain. And if that sounds odd to you, look up trepanning. Hephaestus did as Zeus asked, amazingly. He hit him over the head with his axe, split his head open, and Athene, his child, jumped out, fully armed by her mother, Metis. Now, I've got a question here. Zeus tricked Metis? Zeus is meant to be the most intelligent of all the Olympian gods, or at least the first intelligent god out of everyone, suggesting that the Olympian gods, as they became known, were a step up from the Titans, who don't seem to have been as well developed or as intelligent. Now, you can obviously see this story as maybe an example of intelligence beating barbarism. That's certainly a theme in an awful lot of stories that the ancient Greeks told, particularly in Athens. Although Zeus pretty much does exactly the same thing as his father Kronos, so not particularly different to the barbarism of those stories. The next story is the abduction of Europa, and yes, abduction is a euphemism. Europa was a Phoenician princess, the daughter of the king Agenor of Sidon. She, attended by her maids as a good young girl who doesn't go out without an entourage to protect her virginity, she was gathering flowers near the seashore. Zeus noticed her and therefore decided to take her. He transformed into a beautiful, tame, white bull. Now, yes, they are a bit bull-obsessed, but the bull seems to be sort of the king of the farmyard, the most important animal because it has value. Not only can you use a bull to pull heavy things like a plough, you can also use a bull to impregnate cows and get more cows. And so when you sacrifice a bull to a god, you are sacrificing something of huge value and showing the gods how important the gods are to you. And so the bull becomes this really, really important symbol, not just of strength, but also sexual potency and just general importance. So yes, he transforms into a beautiful, tame, white bull, and a white bull, very, very unusual and thus pretty special. So the girls are rather enchanted by this sight. Oh my goodness, I've spelled by wrong, that's so annoying. And Europa petted it before climbing on its back. The bull, which was actually Zeus, immediately ran off with her into the sea and swam with her to Crete. And a procession of sea gods apparently followed them. At least that's what happened if you believe all the beautiful artwork that's come of this image of horror later on. On Crete, Zeus impregnated her, and her sons include Minos I, who was possibly the grandfather of that Minos in another bull story, and Rhadamanthus. And both of these characters go in the underworld later on and become judges of those who didn't get a fair hearing later on in life. So they're pretty important characters in Greek myth. Europa also has the continent of Europe named after her. Whether or not that's meant to be sort of payback for having basically stolen her from her family and given her this new life without her asking for it is unclear. Another story, the abduction of Ganymede. Zeus is a equal opportunities rapist, and Ganymede was a Trojan prince, the son of King Tros, who was the founder of Troy. He's the grandfather of Priam, who's king of Troy during the Trojan War. Zeus noticed Ganymede and decided to take him. He transformed this time into an eagle. Not entirely sure why. It's very predatory. I'll let you make of that what you will. When Ganymede was alone, Zeus swooped down and seized him and took him off to Olympus. Tros apparently grieved so much for his son that Zeus sent him a present, a pair of storm-footed, which just means fast, immortal horses, apparently, and promised to make Ganymede immortal as well. So he's at least trying to pay him back. Didn't hear about him doing that for Europa, but okay. Later, Zeus made Ganymede his cup-bearer, which literally means he would be wandering around Olympus carrying some wine to pour into cup, so that Zeus could drink it. And this is extremely insulting to Zeus's wife Hera, because his young male lover is right in front of his wife all the time. Finally, he turned Ganymede into the constellation Aquarius, the water bearer, and this is how he made him immortal. Is that really that enjoyable? I'm honestly not sure. Overall, we have Zeus and Jupiter as pretty similar for both the Greeks and Romans. For both of them, he's the most important of the gods. He represents as well the system of patriarchy. His way is law, whether that be Xenia or do as I say, not as I do. And he's often shown in imagery with the people he has kidnapped and sexually abused or impregnated. And overall, we learn from Zeus that he can do what he wants, but you can't. He is a god. You are not. As with many of the stories of the gods, they are a system of control for the populace. The gods represent everything that you can do if you are immortal and have all the power in the world. And those are exactly the sorts of things that you absolutely should not try and do if you are immortal, unless you want Zeus to hurl his thunderbolt in your face. If you've enjoyed this video, then hit like and subscribe for more. I'll be going through the rest of the Greek and Roman gods soon. Bye-bye for now, and happy studying.